They laughed when she walked into the base wearing that faded uniform with the sleeves rolled up and the edges torn. Her name patch half missing, her hair tied back without care. Because to them she was just another washed-up has-been trying to find purpose again after being too slow, too soft, too out of date for today's operations. But no one noticed the sharpness in her eyes, the silent readiness in how she moved, or how she paused for a split second near the memorial wall, brushing her fingers over a name no one else remembered. They only saw an old soldier dragging her duffel through the hallway, and when the younger recruits pushed past her in the mess line, muttering, "Make room, Grandma," she didn't flinch, didn't fire back, just quietly slid her tray down and sat alone near the edge, eating her meal like every bite might be her last. And that's when Lieutenant Granger, fresh out of officer school with polished boots and a loud voice, made sure everyone heard him say, "Hope someone tells her we don't need relics from forgotten wars here." And though his friends laughed, she only looked up once, then went back to eating, until the base commander assigned her to barrack support and forgot about her altogether, filing her under low risk until the morning the blackout hit the comms tower and half the base systems crashed, triggering emergency lockdowns that stranded half a training unit in the tunnel range with failing oxygen control, and when tech scrambled, shouting for backups and calling for any available support, she walked into the control room without a word, flicked open a metal panel no one knew existed, and rerouted the auxiliary line with wires that hadn't been touched in years, muttering codes under her breath like prayers. And when the system blinked green again and the air started pumping into the sealed room, a young officer asked, "How did you know that was there?" And she just said, "We built that tunnel with our hands 30 years ago, before any of you were born." But instead of respect, her quiet action stirred fear, questions, and whispers, especially when a commander checked old records and found her file redacted, pages marked with clearance codes that even he didn't recognize, and when someone asked her to remove her jacket for a uniform check. That's when it happened. The moment the room fell silent, because as she pulled the fabric from her shoulder, a tattoo was revealed, not just ink, but a symbol burned deep into muscle, a black emblem of a hawk wrapped in lightning bolts that only existed in Level 6 briefings. And that's when the general, who had just walked in, stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes locked on the mark, and he whispered, "Where did you get that tattoo?" And for a breathless second, the entire room stood still, because no one had ever seen the general speechless, and no one knew what that mark meant, but they all felt it in their bones. It was not just a symbol, it was a warning, and she turned slowly, eyes narrowing just enough, and said, "Same place you did, sir. Operation Ember Fang, Tier 9 clearance." And with that, the general stepped forward, glanced at the younger officers now, pale with confusion, and nodded once, slow and firm, before saying, "Stand down, all of you." And then he walked her out, silent for a long time before muttering, "They told me no one made it out alive," to which she replied, "That's what they needed you to believe." And from that moment on, word spread like fire across the base, but with it came suspicion, jealousy, and soon orders from higher up to keep her off advanced systems, restrict her access again, as if burying her past would make her presence less dangerous. But then came the second crisis, when a classified drone carrying live warheads lost control mid-flight due to a corrupted AI patch, and the emergency override key failed, and all top engineers and cyber teams were outmatched by the virus spreading through the system like fire through dry grass, and the countdown started ticking. 43 minutes until impact, and they had no way to redirect the drone, no access left, and the control center descended into chaos until a voice crackled through the radio. Her voice, calm, steady, like a rope in a storm, saying, "There's one last backdoor, hardwired failsafe under the old vault panel." And the base chief snapped. That system was decommissioned in '09, but she only replied, "Then I hope your floor plans are better than mine." And before anyone could stop her, she sprinted across the airstrip, old boots pounding hard against the concrete as explosions rocked the hills beyond. And she broke open the rusted vault panel with a crowbar, her hands shaking as sparks flew and flames licked the sky behind her, and using nothing but copper clips, analog dials, and memory, She triggered a direct EMP pulse straight into the corrupted line, and the drone's wings flickered, stalled mid-air, and slowly began to turn, veering harmlessly into the ocean with only 2 minutes left on the clock. And when the crew reached her, she was collapsed by the panel, breathing hard, bleeding from a shot in her arm, but alive, and they lifted her into the evac transport like she weighed nothing. And that night, the general stood before the entire base in full dress uniform and declared, "Let it be known, from this day on, the one you called washed up is the reason we are still standing." But even as applause broke out, she sat in the back, her hands wrapped, her tattoo hidden again, not needing the spotlight, not craving the noise, because she had seen what the world looked like when heroes were used up and tossed aside. And she had no interest in medals, just in keeping the base from making the same mistake again. But that wasn't the end, because as they debriefed the drone incident, they discovered something chilling. The AI patch had not malfunctioned. It had been sabotaged, with lines of code only someone from inside could have written, and suspicion began to spread through the higher ranks, a name emerging, a former ops commander with ties to black market tech deals. And she was called into a dark room by military intelligence, where a silent officer pushed a sealed folder toward her and asked, "Would you come back? Just one more time?" And though she had sworn never to enter that world again, she stared at the folder, her fingers trembling as memories returned. Men screaming in firelit jungles, friends who never came home, missions that never made headlines, and she finally whispered, "Only if I don't come back through the front door." And they understood what she meant, and 2 days later she vanished from the base without a trace, her locker cleared, her name wiped from the system. But in a hangar on the edge of the desert, a jet lifted into the dusk, unmarked, and somewhere deep behind enemy lines, a small cell of enemies began vanishing one by one. Silent, clean, no signs left behind but the Black Hawk scratched into the wall or the floor. And by the time anyone noticed, it was already too late, because she wasn't coming back for glory. She wasn't coming back for redemption. She was coming back to end what someone else had tried to finish for her. And the last message ever received from the field was a voice in the dark, calm and clear, saying, "The mark they feared is awake again."